Bhakti Yoga is so beautiful because the highest aspiration of everyone is to have love and have relationships. And many of these practices that we do, like the mantra, the yoga, the reading of wisdom, all of this is part of the spiritual science of Bhakti Yoga. In the world we're living in today, this is so relevant for our own lives in which we're searching for more contentment. And these are some of the ideas of the deeper meaning behind yoga, because to be honest, yoga in the world has lost its soul. We live in a busy world, a stressful world. For many years I traveled up and down London, up and down the UK, stopping people on the street, like accosting people and showing them spiritual books. And so, it's quite a task to stop someone in their tracks. Everyone's busy, busy, busy. So once I was in a city called Manchester, of course many of you know, the football team. And one person was walking past me, so I said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm a monk." He said, "No time." He walked a little further. I said, "I'll be real quick. We're giving out books on meditation." "No time." He walked a little further. I said, "It may help you out. We're all quite busy." "No time." Then he walked further down. I said, "Have a good day." "No time." And it was kind of interesting because maybe our lives have become so busy that we forgot to make time to be happy, time to be joyful. Sometimes they say the worst type of success you can have in your life is when you achieve all of your goals and then realize they were somebody else's goals. We don't want to just create a life that looks good on the outside, but we want to create a life that feels good on the inside. And so taking some time to kind of reflect in a busy world is not an easy thing, but a super valuable thing to do. They once did a social survey and they asked people, "What do you do to relax?" And what do you think, if I were to ask you, the top answers were? What do you think people in the world do to relax?
Go on holiday.
Go on holiday. Excellent. Yes.
TV.
Watch TV. Yes. What else?
Play sport.
Sports.
Sleep.
Sleep.
Have a drink.
Have a drink. It started quite clean, and then it kind of gradually going into the reality of life. You know what I want to know? The top 4 answers were. I want you to listen to them carefully, and then I'm going to ask you, what do you think all 4 of these things have in common? Social survey. What do you do to relax? Top 4 answers. Number 1, go on holiday. Number 2, watch a movie. Number 3, take intoxication. Number 4, go to sleep.
Escape.
Escape. Each one of those activities is an escape from life. The interesting thing is, none of them are a permanent escape. Because how long can you sleep for? My record is 14 and a half hours as a university student. How long can you watch a movie for? How long can you go on holiday for? And how long does intoxication last? Because there's the morning after, the night before. And so it's very interesting that when people say they want to relax, what they're actually trying to do is escape. But why would we want to escape? This is life. Actually, the spiritual traditions and wisdom teachers across the world tell us, actually it's not. Because actually maybe we're spiritual beings and our nature lies beyond the material. And therefore, intuitively, every single person in this world is looking to transcend the material, to go beyond the material. The famous writer C.S. Lewis once said, "If I find in myself a desire which no experience of this world can fulfill, then I must conclude I was made for another world." It's interesting. So, what does this all have to do with what we're talking about today? It has everything to do with what we're talking about today, because today we're talking about yoga, and yoga is the root of connection. Yoga is the means by which one can actually achieve union with that which is beyond the material. Yoga is not just about connecting your head to your toes, but it's about connecting the soul to divinity. And therefore, yoga has been practiced for generations by people from all walks of life in order to find an experience that we look for deep within us, but which we can't seem to find in this world that we're living in now, right here. And so yoga is talked about in different books in the Vedas. The Vedas are ancient Sanskrit literatures from the East. They're written in Sanskrit, of course, as I said, and they contain knowledge about so many different things about life. For example, many of you have heard of Ayurveda. Ayur means life, and Veda means knowledge. So Ayurveda, or the Indian medicinal art, is basically, etymologically, the knowledge of life. Some of you may have heard of Vastu. Vastu is like the ancient Eastern version of Feng Shui. It's the art of how you place things, how your environment is engineered to maximize the energy. If you're feeling sleepy in a room, it could be that the door is in the wrong place. So this is Vastu. Then, for example, you have Jyotish, astrology. Everyone is interested. What does the future hold for me? Isn't it? Once there was a man, he went to an astrologer, he said, "There are two ladies on the scene. I don't know which one is the lucky one." The astrologer looked into his ball, he said, "You'll marry the first one, the second one will be the lucky one." So Jyotish is the art of the future. How are the planets affecting you? How are the stars aligning? And what other celestial factors are going to have an effect on your future? So like this, many, many different books within the Vedas. Now, when it comes to yoga, there is probably a book which most people in the world associate or learn about yoga from, and that book is called the Yoga Sutras. Have some of you heard of that? Yeah, there's an ancient teacher, his name is Patanjali. And so the Yoga Sutras, what they do is they contain knowledge of an ancient system of yoga known as Ashtanga Yoga. Right, so Asta means 8 and Anga means limbs. So it's literally a process of 8 steps which lead you to divine connection. So right now you may be watching on the news the greatest gathering of human beings on earth, Kumbh Mela. So I went to Kumbh Mela 12 years ago. It's a festival which happens every year, but the major one is every 12 years, and the major one is every 144 years. So right now, in a temporary city in India called Allahabad or Prayag, over 1 month, 300 million people come. That's probably 10 or 15 times the population, more than that, of Melbourne. How many people live in Melbourne? I don't know, I just live here. 6 million? 7 million? We'll give them 10. 30 times of Melbourne in a temporary city in India. If you need private space, don't go to Kumbh Mela. So Kumbh Mela is almost like, it's like a music festival. You know, sometimes you have these music festivals where everyone, but it's like a spiritual festival. So all these yogis, many of whom practice this Ashtanga yoga, you may see them sometimes with the dreadlocks covered in ash. So Ashtanga yoga is an ancient system of spiritual connection. And most of what we know about yoga, which is two things, asanas, which is like bodily postures, and pranayama, which is breathing exercises. These are the third and the fourth steps of Ashtanga yoga. So when you tell people the word yoga nowadays, what they're basically understanding yoga to mean are 2 steps of an 8-step process that's one system of yoga within the ancient literature. So therefore you can understand, for most people in their world, their understanding of yoga is actually very, very limited. Because it's really just dealing with the immediate practices that may give some physical and mental benefits. However, if one wants to understand the complete science of yoga, then there's another book within the Vedas known as the Bhagavad Gita. So many of you may have heard of the Bhagavad Gita. Believe it or not, the Bhagavad Gita is the 3rd biggest circulated book in the world. The first one is the Bible, and you know what the second one is? Harry Potter. Just for your information. And the 3rd most circulated book in the world is the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is an ancient Sanskrit literature, and one of the ancient commentators compares the Bhagavad Gita to a jewel box. So if you think about a jewel box has a base, it has a cover, and hopefully there's a jewel inside of it. And so the Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters, and the ancient commentator tells us that the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are about something called karma yoga, or the science of how to act and live in this world, how to be successful, how to achieve things, how to meet all of the demands of daily life and at the same time remain unaffected by the world. The commentator tells us that the final 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are something called Jnana Yoga, and that's like the cover of the jewel box. Jnana Yoga means the yoga of knowledge, wisdom, or the knowledge of detachment, or the knowledge and yoga of how to let go. Do you feel in your life there are things which you know are not serving you, and you just wish you could let them go? But oftentimes, we're holding on. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a desire. Maybe it's a hope. Maybe it's, I don't know, whatever it may be. We're holding on to different things. And the Bhagavad Gita teaches us that unless we learn how to let go and become detached from certain things in the world, holding on to those things will hold us back from happiness. And so the final 6 chapters are about Jnana Yoga, the yoga of how to let go. But the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are like the jewel inside that jewel box. And those middle 6 chapters are about something called Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti is a very beautiful word. It can mean devotion, it can mean affection, it can mean ultimately love. And love is the highest aspiration of every single living being. You can learn the science or the yoga of how to be successful, how to live. You can learn the science or the yoga of how to let go. But even if you learn those 2 sciences, until and unless we learn the science of how to love, in our hearts we'll always feel like something is missing. And so bhakti or bhakti yoga, the science of how to connect with the spiritual essence of life through love, is actually the highest aspiration of every soul, according to the spiritual teachers of the East. And therefore, yoga finds its ultimate climax in bhakti, or development of this love. So what you see in the world today is there's just a lot of frustrated love, isn't it? Woody Allen once said, me and my wife, you know where this is going. Me and my wife drive in different cars. We have different friends. We eat at different times. We have different jobs, and we do our hobbies differently. We're doing everything we can to keep our relationship together. Because nowadays, as soon as two people get together, it's fireworks, you know, people frustrated love. Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, very next day, gave it away, and all these kind of songs are there, you know. So it's a little bit like that. It's a little bit like that, frustrated love. Some of us are hoping love will come, some of us are thinking we're falling in love, some of us have fallen out of love, some of us have lost hope. We've lost hope. Will it ever happen to me? So therefore, the ancient science of bhakti tells us that when we understand where to repose our love first, then what happens is we begin to love everyone and everything around us naturally. If I direct a laser beam into a diamond, then as soon as that light goes into the diamond, then what will happen is it will spread in every direction. And similarly, when we know where to direct our love and how to connect in a pure relationship of love with the spiritual source of everything, then what happens is in every single one of our relationships here, and not just our relationships with humans, our relationships with animals, not just our relationship with animals, our relationship with the environment, we begin to love, respect, honor, and deeply connect with everyone and everything around us. And this is basically what the world needs. Because the world has become a very unloving place. And therefore in the world today, there's a lot of exploitation, isn't it? Once a boss drove into his company with a brand spanking new Mercedes, and all the employees were looking, and he came into the foyer, all the employees surrounded him. He said, nice car. He said, you like that car? He said, yeah, really nice car. He looked at his employees and he said, next year, if you guys work harder, if you work in a more dedicated way, if you work with your heart and soul, then next year I'll have an even bigger car. Because it's a very exploitative world. Everyone is just trying to take from others. The reason why relationships break down in this world is because two incomplete people come together. And what they look for is to get something from the other person in order to complete themselves. Therefore, in ancient Eastern life cycle, you know how the first 5 years of life begin? Celibacy. What? Someone may say, that's the time. It's interesting that solitude and learning to first love yourself is the first stage in actually beginning to be able to love everyone and everything around you. Because until and unless we understand ourselves, until and unless we're happy and content within ourselves, what we'll do is we'll always enter into relationships with people to try to take something from them. And then what happens is when you find they're not giving you what you want, or you're not giving them what they want, then things can very quickly go south, as they say. So therefore, Bhakti Yoga is so beautiful because the highest aspiration of everyone is to have love and have relationships. And so the Bhagavad Gita really, really teaches us how to actually achieve this love in a spiritual way. And many of these practices that we do, like the mantra, the yoga, the reading of wisdom, all of this is part of the spiritual science of Bhakti Yoga, which actually helps us to achieve union with divinity, or the supreme source of everything. And so this is so relevant in the world we're living in today. This is so relevant for our own lives, in which we're searching for more contentment. And these are some of the ideas of the deeper meaning behind yoga, because to be honest, yoga in the world has lost its soul. There's a lot said about yoga, but unfortunately the greatest gift of yoga is being missed. Like, for example, I have an iPhone, and if I wanted to, I could use the iPhone as a doorstopper, and it'd probably work. But if I did that, someone would say, "Are you crazy? There's much better things you can do with an iPhone." And so to simply use yoga only for physical and mental, it's not that it won't work. Of course it's going to work. It's an ancient science. But to use it simply for that, and to miss out on the deeper gift that it can give you, which is the gift of the experience of eternal love, that would be a shame to miss on that. So this is what the ancient teachers share with us about Bhakti Yoga as the kind of universal spiritual science. And perhaps let me pause here and see whether anyone may have any questions or comments, or perhaps I said something that you would like me to expand upon, or if you have any other general questions kind of related to your spiritual journey, I would be happy to try to respond. So yes, would anyone like to?
Just a quick one. What you've said today till now is, it's like a block of gold to me. It was, you really said some magnificent things. So is there any place where do you have any lectures online, or is this being captured? Because I didn't really know.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
I'd love to.
He's not just a plant in the audience to give me an opportunity to plug all my stuff, but yes, since you've asked. Thank you. No, thank you so much. Yeah, no, I think there's a little leaflet here, which you can maybe pick up, which where you can kind of find out more information. There's obviously the temple. This is being recorded, so it will be on my YouTube channel. Love it, like it, follow it. If you like to, of course, it's up to you. So yeah, it will be online. It's called Wisdom That Breathes, or Keshava Swami. And there are some books here as well. Everything I'm speaking about is within these books. So
thank you very much.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah.
What would you recommend to a 22 years old guy to improve in his spiritual journey? What would you do?
Wow. What would I recommend to a 22-year-old guy on his spiritual journey? I think I would recommend the same thing to a 22-year-old that I would to a 42 or a 62-year-old. One of the first habits we learned as monks was that when you wake up in the morning is the most valuable time of the day. We try to rise before the sun, or at least rise with the sun. The sun energizes the whole universe with energy. And when we rise with the sun, and we take perhaps the first hour of the day to go inside, then what happens is when you then emerge into the world, you emerge into the world as a different person. And so I tell people, join the 5 a.m. club before you join the 9 a.m. reality. Otherwise, it will become the 12 p.m. catastrophe. So, if you can, try it for a month. 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. 1 hour. 15 minutes, move. That doesn't just mean get out of bed. Do some yoga, do some pranayama, some breathing, get your blood circulation going, do some stretching. It's amazing what movement can do just to clear the cobwebs out. 15 minutes, move. 15 minutes, meditate. Now you've energized the external body, go inside. Whatever meditation you'd like to do. Today we did mantra meditation, which is very powerful and recommended. Whatever you decide to do, 15 minutes meditate. 15 minutes, read. Small minds discuss people. Average minds discuss events. But great minds discuss wisdom. So whatever wisdom resonates with you, whatever lens through which you can actually see deeper things in the world beyond just the externals, that kind of wisdom helps you to actually see life in a different way. And 15 minutes, reflect. Write a journal. What are your thoughts? What are your hopes? What are your fears? What are your ambitions? What did you learn? What do you want to learn? So 15, 15, 15, 15. Move, meditate, read, reflect. 1 hour, 5 to 6. See you tomorrow morning. Try it out and see whether that may shift your paradigm significantly. I think it will. And so this is the great opportunity. I was just in Davos at the World Economic Forum, so one afternoon with some of the leaders there, we did a session called Paradoxes of Our Time. So this is a counterintuitive approach to life I was sharing with them that people may not have thought about. For example, I'll share you some of the paradoxes. I was sharing with them, consuming less information can sometimes make you more informed. Speaking less can sometimes help you to amplify your message. Embracing and being okay with failure may actually help you to achieve bigger successes. And then what I shared with them is going slower may actually help you to reach your top speed. Because what we do in the world today is we're endlessly active. And therefore the mind has no breathing space. Once there was a car and it said, "Do not disturb," already disturbed. So it's constantly, just constantly bombarded. They say every single day, 70 gigabytes of data. That's how much the human brain is processing. So therefore, we're not really ever. I share with people that we were nowhere, and then we advanced and we got somewhere, and then we developed technology and now we're everywhere. But because we're on top, constantly on our devices, we're always elsewhere, and therefore practically we're nowhere. Have you ever been in one of those movies where the sound and the video is off? Isn't that annoying? Our life is sometimes like that. So when you start with intention, so when we wake up, for example, we say for the first 3 hours of the day, no looking at your phone. Oh my God. Yes. Don't look at your phone. That's the worst thing you can do. Number 2, try not to even speak to anyone. Number 3, don't plan what you're going to do in the day. It's all going to be waiting for you in a few hours. Don't worry, nothing is disappearing. Forget I was on a podcast once and the person said, what's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? I said, I remind myself I'm nothing to do with this world. I'm a spiritual being. So that you go in first. So I would recommend that's something you can try. And, I mean, I gave you a framework, you can play around with it, whatever. The principle is go slower to reach your top speed.
Thank you.
Yes?
That kind of reminds me, you touched on a little bit of like one of the limbs, dharana, concentration. How are we ever supposed to like really dedicate ourselves to that limb when there's so many things trying to pull at our attention?
Yeah. So the 8 steps, maybe I'll just quickly tell you the 8 steps of Astanga. The first one is yama. That means things you should avoid. The next one is called niyama, which means positive qualities you should develop. The third one is asana, which means postures. The fourth one is pranayam, which means breathing. The fifth one is pratyahara, which means to gradually now begin to remove your senses away from all the agitating things of this world. The sixth one is dharana, which we're mentioning here, which is focus. Then the seventh one is dhyan. Think of Zen meditation. The word Zen comes from dhyan. Dhyan means an intensified form of focus. And then the 8th one is samadhi, which means trance. That's the mystical one. So it's very interesting. People nowadays say like, I can't concentrate. No. Have you ever found that? You just can't concentrate on one thing. Mind is just monkey mind. There's an ancient Sanskrit verse which describes the mind. Shall I tell you? In Sanskrit it goes like this. Markatasya surapanam tatra vreshtikadam sanam tanmadhye bhuta samcharo yadva tadva bhavishyati. This ancient Sanskrit verse describes the mind and it says, Markatasya, the mind is like a monkey. You've all seen monkeys, right? But it's not just a monkey. Markatasya surapanam is a monkey that's completely drunk. But not just that, tatra vrishtika damsanam. Your mind is like a monkey that's completely drunk, that's been bitten by a scorpion. Not just that. Tanmadhye bhuta samcharo. Your mind is like a monkey which is completely drunk, bitten by a scorpion and haunted by a ghost. Yadva tadva bhavishyati. Who can understand what that mind will come up next? The mind is like so. Once I was on London Underground, and you know they have these escalators which go down rush hour. So it was full of people, and I got to the top of the escalator, and this thought just went in my mind. I wonder what would happen if I pushed the person in front of me. I was like, my God. This mind is crazy. So people wonder why their mind is so, but that's why you have to do, before you can get to dharana, a certain level of focus, you have to do yama, niyam, asana, pranayam, pratyahara. In other words, the more you go through a yogic process, the more you're able to just be in the moment. Actually, this is what everyone is trying to experience. That's why you have books in the world like The Power of Now. That's why it becomes. Why do you think people do extreme sports? Because when you're jumping off a helicopter, you're not thinking about what you're going to eat tomorrow. I can guarantee you that for sure. And you're not going to be thinking about, that person you had an argument with yesterday. When you're jumping out of a helicopter, you are in the moment. Because people are trying to experience presence. But so much of our life, we're not able to experience presence because we've not achieved that dharana. And that's because we're not living a yogic or a connected lifestyle. We live such unnatural lifestyles. Like we do things, sorry, I'm just on a rant now. Really got me going. I'll just share this one. Like, for example, we do such unnatural things. Like, say, for example, hundreds of years ago, when people wanted to go from one place to another, they rode a bike. We just went from one place to another. Then we became advanced. We create automobiles, so you can just whiz around faster. So now what we do is all day we whiz around in automobiles, work super hard, and then what we do is we pay $50 for a gym membership. And then what you do after a hard day's work, when you're already super tired, you go to a gym, you go into a room, you sit on a bike and sweat your whole heart out and go absolutely nowhere. And it's like, yeah, this is life, man. This is what we do. We've got to keep fit after all, Our lives have become so unnatural. Like, for example, if there was no electricity, you know what would happen, right? People would actually go to sleep at the right time. Because once it's dark, there's nothing else to do. And you know what, right? People would actually wake up at the right time. Because once the sun rises, that's your window of opportunity. But now what we do is we light everything up in neon lights through the night. Stay awake. And when the sun, which is energizing the universe and our life, is out, we're under the sleeping bag. So it's good to think, we're all part of it, we live in this world, what to do. But it's an opportunity to sit back and reflect. Sorry, that was a rant. Thank you. Yes?
Just wondering about the connection or how tightly tied together Bhakti and Ashtanga are.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So, just tell me when how we're doing for time.
Yes, we can do maybe 5 more minutes.
Sure.
1-2 questions. I have one also. Is it okay?
Okay, yeah, sure. No worries. All major credit cards accepted. The link between Bhakti and Ashtanga Yoga. So Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga are connected. What the ancient scriptures explain is that there's actually a yoga ladder. And different yoga systems are helping us deal with different aspects of our life so that gradually we can uplift our consciousness more and more and more. So for example, karma yoga is kind of lower on the yoga ladder because it's helping us to understand how do I navigate my day-to-day duties without being tainted by the world. Then higher than that is like Jnana Yoga. And Jnana Yoga is the yoga of knowledge, which helps us to begin thinking like, what more is there? Like, let me now search intellectually for what is beyond matter. And then Ashtanga Yoga is very powerful because it's now not just knowledge, but it's actually a stabilizing of the mind. Like I said, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. So Ashtanga Yoga is like a stabilizing of the mind. But the ultimate goal of life is not just to stabilize the mind. The ultimate goal of life is to spiritually stimulate the mind. And so Bhakti kind of carries on from Ashtanga Yoga and says, now you have mind control, now you have focus, now you're in a position to fall in love. And therefore, you generally find that those who have practiced some Ashtanga yoga, sometimes it's easier for them to take up Bhakti Yoga because they've achieved a level of calmness in their life. However, the Bhagavad Gita also says that Bhakti is also like an elevator. So some people go Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, Bhakti, because love is the ultimate aspiration. But what the Bhagavad Gita explains is that you can also begin Bhakti right from the beginning, and embedded within Bhakti is all the benefits of Karma, Jnana, and Ashtanga. So it's almost like an elevator, and the other one is like a staircase. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you can get straight into the box. You don't need to open it.
Oh yeah, you're going back to the metaphor.
Yeah.
Well, the box is like already open. Oh, that was an easy get out. The box is already open. What to do? So the box is open actually. No, it is actually open. I'm really telling the truth. I'm not just making it up. The box is open because Krishna, what he does in the Bhagavad Gita is he presents all three yoga systems and he says, start where you want. Because different people are looking for different things. Right? Like you may be more evolved looking for spiritual love. Many people come to a spiritual place, but they're still looking for material benefit. I want a house by the sea, a color TV, can I do it spiritually? You know, it's like, so they're still doing some spiritual practice, but their basic motivation is still material. But that's still good. But then you find basically practitioners who have different desires. And when one has a very evolved desire, where one says like, I'm not trying to really enjoy anything of this world anymore because I don't think there's going to be much here for me. And then that type of person who's kind of a little bit done with all of this, they're like, okay, my heart's open. I want to experience divine love. So they could perhaps go direct bhakti. Others may have to go through like that. So it just depends on one's own disposition. Thank you. Okay, yes?
I'm very inspired by the love stories between Radha and Krishna. And my favourite is the one where Radha's a baby and she doesn't open her eyes until she sees Krishna. And could you please share me your favourite love story between Radha and Krishna?
Wow. Thank you so much. No one's ever asked me that. You Aussies have a soft heart, huh? So just for those of you who may not be familiar, in the ancient Eastern tradition and the tradition of the Bhagavad Gita, divinity, we understand, is known by many different names. And one of the names that we use to connect with divinity is Krishna. Krishna literally means the all-attractive one. And what we understand in Eastern theology is that divinity is not simply male, but that divinity has a male and a female counterpart, and they're inseparable. And so there's a masculine divine and there's a feminine divine. And therefore, Krishna, if known as the masculine divine, is always accompanied by Radha, who is the feminine divine. And therefore, together, the divine couple constitute divinity. And that divine couple have many interactions between them. And so, there are many, many stories which depict the great appreciation and the love and the exchanges of affection between them. So one of the stories given here was that when Radha was born, so she's divinity, Krishna is also divinity, but they kind of appear in this world at certain times. So when she appeared in this world, she was a baby, but she never opened her eyes. And her parents were worried that, is she blind, is she not? But Krishna, who was also a small boy at that time, because he's just slightly older than her, so Krishna came kind of crawling over to her cot and kind of peered in, and as soon as he was next to her, then she kind of opened her eyes. And the first thing that they saw was each other. Very beautiful. So there are many other stories like this in an ancient literature known as the Bhagavad Purana. One time, Radha was with all of her friends. And so they were asking each other, what did you dream about Krishna last night? Because all of them are always dreaming about being with Krishna. So they were all sharing, I dreamt this about Krishna, I dreamt that about Krishna. And all throughout it, Radha was quiet. So then, they all looked at Radha and they surrounded her and said, what did you dream about Krishna? You are very quiet. And then, with a look of complete shyness, she looked down and she said, dream of Krishna, dream of Krishna. All night I was thinking about Krishna and I couldn't get him out of my mind. I couldn't even go to sleep. And that was her answer. So that's love. Love means that one's consciousness is completely pervaded by the beloved, and that no time or space or separation or obstacle can impede the flow of love. This is an ancient definition of love given in the scriptures. How do you know that you love someone? Because we use love so cheaply now. I love him, I love her, I love orange juice, I love that film. I love. But how do you know you love? So there's an ancient definition given in the Sanskrit literature of how you know you love someone. And that definition is Yad bhava bandayo sa prema parikirtita. That when there's a relationship between two people and there's every reason for that relationship to break, but the two individuals still continue loving each other without any diminishing emotion, then you can understand it's love. Love is tested by obstacles. Love is tested by impediments, but the love just carries on increasing. So like this, so much is described about love in the ancient spiritual teachings. That's what bhakti is. Yeah. Even monks talk about love. I never thought as a monk I'd speak so much about love. But it's funny now because when we say love, we always think of romantic love, actually. That's a bit limited. Love is much more universal, it's much more all-pervading, it's much more deep than just that, which is obviously one part of love. But so anyway.
Last question.
He's the organizer, you can't argue with him.
First of all, thank you very, very much, Maharaj, for
Thank
coming today. We are, I believe, very, very happy to have your presence here. And my question is something that I have heard quite a lot in many of the Tuesdays programs we have here in the temple. We have Bhagavad Gita classes, and there is always this question coming that I would like to ask you, if you can give your vision. And it's about, we know that spirituality is universal.
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, we see how many traditions and religions proclaim having a universal spirituality, but they all have their own truth and their own path and their own kind of journey, which many times, for most of the people that I have spoken, they say that divides people, that even create conflict between them. So my question is, how Bhakti Yoga differentiate from a tradition that, or traditions that can create conflict and division, if actually differentiating something, if you can just talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Today we were talking about the sun, and there's one sun in the sky, and depending on where you are in the world, you call it something different. Either you call it the sun, if you're in India you'll call it Surya, if you're in Spain you'll call it Soleil. Sol. A bit rusty. And ultimately it's the same sun. And depending on where you are in the world, you may call it a different name and it may rise at a different time. But it's the same sun giving the same energy. And so in the same way, the Vedic teachers tell us that there's one divinity known by many different names, revealed in different parts of the world, in different traditions. And that actually, amidst all the theologies of the world, while there is definitely diversity amongst them, there is actually a deep unity of purpose amongst them. When people are able to grasp theological paths in essence, rather than seeing them very externally and superficially and using them to divide, then actually people can live together, practice different various theological paths, but still live in great harmony and still individually achieve great spiritual success. And so our basic point in the Eastern traditions is that it doesn't really matter what religion you practice, because really there's only one religion, and that religion is the religion of love. And if someone is practicing a theology or a spiritual path in their life, and they genuinely feel that it's expanding their capacity to selflessly love everyone and everything around them, they're doing great, and they just need to carry on. But if people feel that they're practicing a spiritual path, but that's not happening, then maybe that's the opportunity for them to look at other things that may serve them in their journey. So we're not here to say we're the best. We're not here to say we've got a monopoly on spirituality. We're not here to try to defeat any other theological path. We can appreciate the spirituality in all places. And at the same time, we offer people this path, because if they feel that what they're currently doing is not giving them an experience of that selfless divine love, then maybe this is something you can try. And it's in that spirit that we share these teachings. Does that help? All right, thank you so much everyone. You've been a wonderful audience, and yes, Hare Krishna.